Recording. Okay, so today, what I wanted to talk about was obviously AutoCrat. In general, I wanted to talk about mail merge in the land of Google instead of the land of Microsoft Office. And like anything else, there's pros and cons. There's some things I like in the Office approach. There are really some things I like in the Google approach. The thing you have to remember is that the mail merge feature is not built into the Google products. It is an add-on. Okay. So it's the same concept. You're taking the idea of I have watching my camera here. I have gotta move. I'm terrible at this. Can you tell I'm a lefty? I have a Google Doc, I have a Google Sheet, and I want to combine the two to make documents. There are different mail merge add-ons. The one I'm going to talk specifically about today is AutoCrat. I know I have people in district who are using another one called Yet Another Mail Merge. If you only want to merge to email, which is a cool thing that is not easy to do with Office, the tool that you'll want is Formule, and I have done workshops on that in the past and certainly can again. I like that one because it's just really simple to use and very reliable, but it's only for generating to email. There are other options for doing the mail merge. There are also add-ons for a form, for instance. So today, specifically talking about AutoCrat, and the example that I'm going to do is actually involving a spreadsheet and a document, and the spreadsheet is not generated by a form. However, and we'll talk briefly about forms, a spreadsheet that has been created by, publishing a form and having the form dropping that data into the spreadsheet, that is a perfectly acceptable way to use this AutoCrat tool. And the cool thing about that is you can set it up so that when somebody clicks submit on the form, they instantly will then actually get that confirming document, whatever that looks like. And simply by filling out the form, you can set it up so that instantly, boom, this thing goes out to them and potentially to others as well. In my example, I'm going to keep it simple and keep it a spreadsheet not connected to a form, because I think for a while people were getting the idea that you had to use a form, and that's actually not true at all. Okay, so on my screen right now, just because that happens to be what is up, magnify this a little bit. Oops, let me get over here first. Okay, make that a little bit bigger. Hopefully that's a little bit better for you guys. So real simple letter here, and we're going to finish the last couple parts ourselves. Then I have a sample spreadsheet. This one is actually a little bit bigger anyway. So I just kept it really simple, and I'm actually going to, just to keep this a little bit more interesting in class, I'm going to actually I'll probably make typos here if I'm not careful. So I'm going to make this, Rose, you're going to be Louisa Alcott. And let's see. And I'm pushing two of these to my personal emails. So I haven't changed the names, but I've just put in some emails for people that are in the class, so I don't torment anybody who's outside. So here's my spreadsheet. Very simple. 4 rows. Okay. And now I'm noticing a couple people in the document, which is fine. Be aware, and this is a good reminder for me to say this, the one thing AutoCrat is very sensitive about is who owns the document and creates the AutoCrat. So if you're in my copy of the document, you can't actually do the AutoCrat steps. So if you want to do the AutoCrat steps, you're going to want to go, of course, to File, Make a Copy, and work in your own copy, because you cannot do it in this one. Heaven knows what we would create by doing that. So just be aware of that. And we've had trouble in the past where maybe somebody went into a new role or left the organization, and somebody else now is responsible for this particular AutoCrat task. Typically what you have to do is actually recreate it. It's not going to really work well otherwise. So if I create one for here and then suddenly that task is turned over, let's say to Jane Risley, when Jane gets it, she's actually going to probably make a new copy of the spreadsheet. And in that new copy, she's going to make her own AutoCrat so that everything is owned by her and works for her. And then my other suggestion about that, purely practical, one of the things I do when I create an AutoCrat is I pretty thoroughly document it by taking some screenshots and other things, so that if I do have to recreate it later or I'm bequeathing it to somebody else, they've got all the steps to create exactly the same one, so that doesn't change in between. So I would say that's a fairly important thing. If you're not used to screenshots, by the way, the workshop that I'm going to do on Awesome Screenshot would be really cool if you're not familiar with that. So anyway, here's my spreadsheet. I want to merge this data into that letter that I was showing you. I did a lot of the setup already. So if you look at it, basic letter, but I have got field references in here. Another comment is these look the same, really, if you do word mail merge, these look the same as the field references in Word. However, if you are taking one from Word and moving it to a Google Doc and you do like a copy paste or something like that, you want to redo these. Okay? Do not just let them paste in. They will look the same, but they won't work. And these are literally done by typing. Here, let me just get rid of one of them so you can see. Literally, less than, greater than, greater than. There's no fancy symbol or anything else. And then I go back and I make sure I'm in the middle of those, and I actually put in my field reference. Now, in this case, I specifically left 2 of them so I could demonstrate the process, but not waste your time watching me do the whole thing. So when I go back into my spreadsheet and I want the email field, which is called INS email in here, I want to put that in the other sheet. Now, a little trick that most of the time doesn't matter, that I've been doing a lot more in recent times, I generally don't even copy from the spreadsheet cell. I usually go up here and get this because I don't want to bring any formatting or anything like that with it. So I'm up here in my formula bar. I've copied that with a Control-C, and now I'm going back to my letter. I'm making sure I'm in between those brackets exactly, and I'm pasting that in. The bolding was already on there, so it did bold it. Okay. Notice that I can call it anything I want here, but inside these, of course, the field name has to exactly match the spreadsheet, which is why I do copy paste. Just don't trust my typing. If there's a little space in there or something that I can't see, I want to make sure I grab it. So again, going back to the spreadsheet, this time I want the phone, so I'm clicking on the cell, highlighting in the formula bar, Control-C to copy. And then I'm back over here, and again, I am pasting inside the brackets. Now, another comment here right now. The bolding is not at all necessary to the process. This is me. Depends on the document you're doing. If I'm doing something like this format, I really like to highlight the text that is different in the email. So I will tend to bold them or do something similar so that they really stand out. These, because I know I want people to change them, I've even chose to underline as well. Okay, so other than that, the document can be formatted any way you want. It could be 20 pages, 5, 1, 2 sentences, doesn't matter. Most formatting that I can think of. I played a little bit with tables. I have not done those extensively, but again, they should be able to be used. When I'm referring to tables with data in them, obviously just a table would be fine, but I've played with fields in those a little bit. So anyway, here is my letter document. Here is my spreadsheet with the 4 exciting data rows here. And what I want to do is end up with 4 resulting documents coming from this. Now, you can do a merge and simply create the documents. Or you can do a merge and actually share that document with somebody, which is also then going to trigger an email with the share. Okay, so that's kind of where we're headed now. So we got the 2 pieces. Now we're going to put them together. AutoCrat is an add-on for spreadsheets, which means I have to be in the spreadsheet when I am doing this process. So I'm in it. I'm going to add-ons. I already have it. But if you didn't, you would go to get add-ons and you would search AutoCrat up in the search apps. You can see it's kind of right here anyway, and you would get it. And then there's that screen where you sign away your firstborn child to say, yes, I do really want this, and you're good to go. So now that I have it, I'm just going to go over to AutoCrat and I'm going to launch it. So the first time you use it in any new spreadsheet, this is what it's going to look like. But once I add it, I've got it forever. I just have to add it individually to specific spreadsheets. Okay, so I've launched it. It's starting. As you can see, it's loading. I actually really like this screen with the funny line. So I'm going to click New Job. It's not like I have a lot of choice. It wants me to name it. Typically, this doesn't really matter because you're only normally probably going to want one merge per sheet, but you could technically have other merge jobs for this sheet. So I'm just going to call this one example. That's fine. And you'll notice I have a save. Excuse me. Okay, so I could save, but I'm going to keep going. Notice there is a help guide, by the way. I'm going to go to the next screen. Okay, now here I have to tell it what's the what's the Google document that I'm going to merge this with. So and it shows me some recent ones I've used, but what I need to do is I need to select from drive because it's one I already have. Okay. And then I happen to be able to see it here. Otherwise, I would have to use my search to search for it a little bit, but this should be the document. So I'm going to click it. There's another thing to be careful of. You want to click one time on the document name, and then you do need to click select, because if it's folders, you can get yourself into some trouble there. Now it's showing me the correct document name. This is what happens when I've been talking very long. Sorry. So I've got the document. Now I'm going to choose next. Okay. Oh, I always panic when I get here. They change this screen. So normally what I would expect to see is matching field names here because I was very careful to use the same names in the document and in the spreadsheet, which makes things much easier. But what they moved around is you have to first tell it. Remember how a sheet can have, I'm pointing with my finger like you can see my screen. A sheet can have multiple tabs, so you have to tell it which tab in the sheet. So I have to choose sheet 1. Now it's going to think about it. Now it says, oh, okay, so you want me to put, this field in the letter with this field from the spreadsheet, and this field in the letter with this field from the spreadsheet, and so on. So if I did my job right, every one of these boxes here should already be filled in because they match exactly. If one didn't, like if I typed instead and made a mistake, I can simply pick it from the list. Okay, so in this case, I'm fine. So I'm just going to click next. So on this screen, in many ways, I'd say this screen is probably the heart of the whole thing. So because we are going to be creating documents, do you really want to so I'm going to generate 4 letters, which is not a lot, but you could be generating 100, right? So do you really want 100 documents in your folder that say the same thing? I'm going to go with no. So I want to call this, because it's community ed, it's spring. So the next thing, fall 2020 semester. So this is going to be the same for everybody. That's what my people are going to get and see. But then I would like to include their name. So each one of those shows the name of the person receiving this email and maybe something else as well. So I need to put the field references directly in here. And it says that right here. It says you can use tags. And I need this blue button here in order to do that. Okay, and this is the part that's a little, I'm going to go with not intuitive. So when I click this, I want to use the instructor's, I'll just go with, now again, you want to think here. I've got a field in there that is first and last name all together. But if you think about alphabetizing a list of file names, I really would prefer to say last name. And that, so I click it, it doesn't appear anywhere. Now I have to click here and paste it. Okay, then I'm going to say comma space, go back to my tags, choose instructor first name, come back over here and paste it. Like I said, clunky, not exactly intuitive, but it works. And then if I wanted to really go further, like maybe I'm going to send a couple invitations to an instructor that taught more than one class. So maybe I also then want to just go back over here and grab the class name and paste that in. It's going to be kind of a long document name, but it might be worth my while to be able to identify what I want. So you'll see what that looks like in a minute. Next is, what time of output do you want? Well, I want, I'm going to stick with Google Docs in this case, but I could generate a PDF. I tend to stick with Google Docs if I'm doing something internally, but so then the classic way to do this is multiple document mode. In other words, I want one letter for each row in the spreadsheet. Okay, usually that's what you want, but there can be a question about printing all of those if you wanted a hard copy of all these because you're going to do a print mailing, and there is a way to do it. But if you don't really need all these to be in separate things, you could do single output mode, which would put all, in my case, 4 spreadsheet rows in a single document, which would certainly be very easy to print. But then you wouldn't worry about this individual naming. This naming is really if you're going to be naming one for each person, okay? So we're going to stick with the classic mode, and that should be all we have to answer here. So we're going to say next. Now, destination folder is very important, and I didn't show you this up front, but let me just open my drive for a minute here. So the folder that I shared with you, oh, I didn't share the other one, did I? I made a separate folder called AutoCrat results. Ideally, you want a whole separate folder to contain the documents that you are going to be generating. And I've had better luck, although I started this years ago and it's probably fine now, with having that be like a top level folder in Drive, and then I move it later. But that's the folder that I'm actually going to put my results in. So if I go back to my spreadsheet, it's defaulting to the folder I started from, which I don't want. I'm going to remove it. Then I go to choose folder. And this is the one I want. Otherwise, I'd have to search. So I'm going to do this one. Again, it is one click. You have to be very careful with the folders. Double clicking is going to put you inside there, not selected. So I'm clicking once here. I'm choosing select. That's the folder I want to drop my results in. I say next. I have never had a cause to use this dynamic folder reference, so I'm skipping it right now. Next. Merge condition. Quite often you're not doing this. However, I'll show you a really nice trick about this later. So for right now, I don't want one. I'm just going to say next. So right now it's going to send it to everybody. This is a pretty critical screen here too. So I want to do a share with whoever's email address I had in the spreadsheet. Notice you can share it as editable, view only, like a lot of different share settings. Okay, I'm going to do it as an editable doc. You can control whether they can reshare, which I don't care. You can send from a generic no reply. I'm going to send it from mine, but kind of a nice thing. Okay, then this is where it creates the actual email that is going to do the document share. So my to would have to be the email address of the person. So I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to grab the instructor email and paste that in. Same process as we saw on the other screen. I could do a CC, which will be to the same well, it could be to some other reference in there. Or if I wanted to, who should I torment? If I wanted to send all of these copies, for instance, to Donna Wormold, which I'm not really going to do, could be fun though. I could do that. You can do a BCC. You want to be careful with those. You could reply to, which I love because the current, the regular Gmail doesn't really let us do that right now, which I really like this. So I could have, I'm sending them out on behalf of somebody, but the reply to could be to them. Subject line, again, it's going to be something similar to what I did with the file naming. So community ed fall 2020, teaching invitation, I don't remember what I call it. And then I don't really care what it says. Now, I do actually, because I'm going to have a bunch of these in my sent, so it's still a good idea to go ahead and use your fields here. So I might still do this last name, first name thing, just so my email is easier to find this and see the differences between them. Please, only I could type, please read the attached document. So there we go, from me. And so that's just going to be the email part of this. Then I'm going to, and again, I could have been saving at any point in this process if I wanted to. I'm going on faith here. Now, if this were a spreadsheet attached to a form and you wanted this to happen every time somebody clicks submit, that's when you would do the run on form trigger. Okay, that's when you would do it. Otherwise, you don't need that, just for an unattached spreadsheet. Run on time trigger, most people are not doing this. Quite simply, that would be do my merges at 7 p.m. every night for anybody who hasn't gotten one yet. So not very useful in most people's workflow, but an option. So now, oops, did I go back by accident? Sorry. So in both these cases, I'm going to say no right now. And there is no next because I'm done. So now I have to save. I have no choice. So I'm saving my job. And then this is your sort of bar for managing the job from this point forward. If I hit this play button, I'm going to be running the whole thing and 4 letters are going to go out. This would let me go back and edit some more water if I wanted to. This would let me get rid of the whole thing, which I clearly don't want to do. This one is really what I want right now, which is to preview it and see if it's really set up to do what I want to do. So when I click the preview job details, it's giving me some basic stats about it. So it's looking at the spreadsheet. It says, oh, you have 4 rows that would need to be merged. And if you were really watching the screen, you might notice that it just added a few columns in my spreadsheet. Okay, so added a few columns. It's telling me some information about this. I'm going to scroll down a little bit more. Blah, blah, blah. Kind of shows me a little generic version here. And now, if you really want to test this, I highly recommend this. You really do want to do a preview for the first mergeable row. Okay, so I'm going to click that. Wait patiently. Always my strong suit. Okay, so it says it did successfully do it. And this was the first row in the spreadsheet, so you can't see it right now, but that was the one I set, I believe, for rows, hopefully. But it let me get the preview email, not the person it was set to. This is actually a link to the document it created. And if I actually go to the drive and I go look at my results folder, it has that preview in there. So it's telling me that it's a preview, that it's not like the real thing. But if I double click and open it, Now I can look at this before I send it out to see what it actually says. So here I'm like, maybe I don't want bold up here, so I might want to change that. But I'm getting a class name. So what you're looking for is like things that didn't come through, just things that are getting maybe cut off or wrapping weirdly, anything that's making your formatting funky. Um, but it's all here. This is the information that I had in the spreadsheet, presumably for this Louisa Alcott. So if I go back and just look at my spreadsheet, well, which I can't because I'm in the preview right now, but you get the general idea. So I'm going to actually close this preview and I'll leave it there for right this minute. I'm just going to go back into my spreadsheet and I'm going to close this screen. So my preview looked good, except possibly I didn't like the bolding just on this name up here. So I'm just going to remove that. Obviously no save or anything because it's Google. So when I run the real one, that should not exist. So before we do anything else, I'm actually going to close this. Okay, we saved it. I'm going to close it. I did want to look, and yes, that first row indeed was the one where I did add Rose's email address, but I still kept that person's name. Okay, you see my new columns off to the right, okay, but nothing's in them yet. And it just picks whatever column is next to what you already had filled in. And so now what I'm actually going to do is go actually run it. Okay, so you know what? I'm going to make one of these fail. It is not a valid email address. Okay, so I'm going to go back to add-ons. I'm going to go to AutoCrat. What? Do not do this to me. Oh, it is there. I expected to see more things on the menu. Okay, I thought it didn't save. All right, so now I'm ready to run it. Presumably everything's good, ready to run. So now I am going to be really brave. Click the Run Job button. You will get a little like readout here, tells you merge sequence started. Oh, I should have scrolled so you could see it creating on the right. That was dumb. Oh, okay. See these building over here. Watch this. Watch the birdie right here in the corner. See how it's adding things in. So 2 are done. 3 are done. So you can see it kind of counting as you go. Okay, it's done. So I can close this. It gives me these columns. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, this is what I wanted to see. Okay, so you'll recall that I messed up that 4th email address on purpose. So look at the readout that I get here. So document successfully created, document successfully merged, so it exists and we'll see it. Failed to add this person as an editor because they don't exist. Okay, so that was my fail. It was not AutoCrat's fail. I like the bad request part. Okay, but these all seem to have run successfully. So in theory, Amaya and Rose would have gotten emails in their inboxes with links to their documents, which would be shared with them. If I go to the Drive folder, I have those 4 documents. Oh, look, Amaya and Rose both say they got theirs, so that's good. Okay, so that means if I went into, let's see, Rose was actually Louisa Alcott. So if I go into here and pull up that document, if I go look at the share, apparently today is the day I get to practice patience. It is shared with Rose DeSico. I'm going to get done, and she's actually in there. So at this point, she can edit, she can do anything she wants with this, and this sent out an email notification to her. Okay, I'm going to close that one. So here's my folder with all 4 of these, the names of who they went to, and shared with the various accounts. Now that last one, scroll back over here. What name was that? It was the one with my name on it. Okay, I need to be sure. So if I go here and I look at this one, this is the one where the share failed because I used a bad address. So in this one, you can see already that it is not shared with anybody else just by looking at the blue icon. Okay, so that one did not happen appropriately. But what I like about this is at least it tells you what worked or didn't work. So you can at least go back and fix things. Now, one of the things that you need to understand about working with this is, so I ran this and I did have the one error. So then I would realize that I had a faulty email address. Okay. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to fix that because it should just be Kate for my little student account. Now I want to run this again. I do not want to send it to the other 3 people because why should they get their inbox exploding all because I can't type. So I only want to send it to this last person. So the trick for that is oops, try that again, Kate. You clear everything in the merge rows for that row or whatever rows were an issue, okay? So now when I go back to add-ons, AutoCrat, launch, and I tell it to run, one row is going to get merged because it knows I already did the other ones. Okay, and this time I'm guessing that the whole thing should be successful. Yep, email sent to me. Now, the other thing, and I'll just point it out real quickly in there, is if you had some other column in here, like let's say we could add one more column to this sheet. So I'm highlighting over here, doesn't really matter where, but I'll put it here. And I'm inserting a new column and I'm going to say responded. And let's say I'm going to put an X and an X. So I want to send a second one to anybody who didn't respond before, let's say. So an easy way to do that is just add-ons, AutoCrat, launch. But before running it, because it's not going to run for anybody right now, right? Because it's gone for everybody. Oh, what did I forget? Okay, somebody should have yelled at me. If I want to run this again, I actually have to remove all of these. Okay. But, add-ons, AutoCrat, oops. Sorry about that. Really? So what I want to do this time is edit first. So in my editing, I have to skip a couple steps. So next, 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 merge condition. So now I'm going to add a condition where the column responded because it's looking at the first column. Wait a minute. Back. I can't remember what it said now. I think it's supposed to be as null. Or just null. Sorry, if I read down below. Okay, so it shows you down here, null would be empty. So in other words, I want it for anybody who didn't respond. So what I'm going to do is responded equals null, and then I can just save because everything else is the same, right? So then I can run it again. It should pick up 2 of them. I see 2 rows. 2 will be merged. Now I could have changed the text more or something to say, hey, I'm nagging you because you didn't do this before, but you at least get the general idea. 1 minute here. It's almost done. It's not the fastest thing on the planet. This is really, get it started. It's a great time to go make a phone call or, whatever. Technically, I could go somewhere else. For some reason, I feel more comfortable if I just leave it running on the screen, but that's my generally cautious nature. So it's done. I can close it. It's sent it to these people. Again, one other little tip then, if you're using the same sheet in the way that I just did, if you wanted to keep the information on who you successfully reached the first time, what you could do is copy those columns and put them further out to the right from the first run, and then clear these ones here for your second run. That's just kind of like a small practical piece of advice. So we're pretty much at the end of time. So on the good side, I did fit this pretty well to the time that we had. I have a couple other quick tips if anybody's got time to stay for a couple minutes. I didn't see a lot of questions on the right, which is good or bad. I don't know. So if you have any questions, you're welcome to put them in there or just reach out to me separately later. Hopefully, I know some of you have played with this before, just looking at the list, and some of you were new. So hopefully everybody got a little bit of something. I'm running a little behind right now, but I do have some AutoCrat materials, and I will try to send those along. Rose, your question about upgrading probably would be a good idea. Happy to work with anybody on that if you run into any questions. It's could go very smoothly. It could be a little, weird. And but again, it's supposed to be a little bit more stable and the screens are a little different. So I would say probably not a bad idea. The other comment that I wanted to make, I have some older AutoCrats right now that are set to run on form trigger, and they're not actually behaving right, and I have not had time. What I think I need to do is just, from everything I've read, I just need to go and kind of recreate them and they'll be fine. Because they were, going back to Rose's question, they were created under an earlier version of AutoCrat. So now that I've upgraded, they don't seem to be behaving too well. So I just want to go redo it under the new one, and I just haven't had time. But what is also very handy, just so you can monitor a process that is running from a form, is I would strongly suggest that you go into Tools and use your notification rules, if you're familiar with those, and just say, tell me whenever somebody submits a form. And you can have one of these two choices. The one form I'm having an issue with right now, it's only one. It doesn't get used very often, so I just tell it anytime somebody submits a form, tell me right away. So the minute I go get that email, I just go push the AutoCrat. I just make sure that it ran. That's all I do. So you can put notifications on those form-related spreadsheets if you want to know when something gets filled in. I just want to make sure I didn't miss any tips. Oh, there was one, and this is really important, okay, in my opinion. It's always about my opinion, right? Okay, so I have a sample form here, all right? This is, if you've had one of my forms classes, you're going to know what I'm talking about here. This is kind of I don't want to say pet peeve of mine, but this is just making your life hard. So I see a lot of forms that are done like this. So, you have a very polite, thing. You have, and I mean, I see forms where, there's a relatively long, wordy question on there. So it could be several lines of text right here, right? The problem is when you look at the associated spreadsheet, your column headings are whatever the text was for the form. So here's my lovely column heading, right? You know what that means? That means in your merge document, you're going to have less than, Please explain how your field trip will be evaluated for purposes of continuing improvement. It's hard to read. It's just clunky. But if you go in your form and you go to these longer winded questions and you click the 3-button menu on the item and you choose description, what you need to do is cut that out of there, paste it in the description, and change to a short question. Actually, let's say how evaluated. It's not like it has to be one word. And then when I go back to my spreadsheet, it's going to change the column heading in the spreadsheet. So you want short column headings in the spreadsheet so that your spreadsheet doesn't drive you insane when you're looking at that, and so that your merge fields are short and to the point. But your questions, when somebody is viewing the form, and I'm just going to go to preview real quick here. Yeah, it looks a little different, but I've never had anybody react to this looking weird. It's fine. It gets the point across. So I would highly, highly, highly recommend, and not just when you're merging, but anytime, that you do this with your forms, because the spreadsheets are just much, much easier to deal with. So that's probably one of my key little tips from today. The other thing I will say, and then, is whatever is in this top row, which is going to be used as the column headings, generally speaking, no punctuation. Okay, certain pieces of punctuation actually cause a problem, like you don't want slashes and signs and stuff like that. I think periods might be okay, but generally speaking, no punctuation. So do whatever you want to do here to look professional and grammatical and everything, but keep this very brief, down to a word or two, no punctuation. Okay. The other slightly important one is based on how you name these things. When you look at your associated spreadsheet, no 2 column names should be the same. So if you're like requesting, making it possible for somebody to enter 3 phone numbers, don't just call them phone, phone, and phone. They need to be phone 1, phone 2, phone 3, so that they are all different, because otherwise, how would you refer to that in the merge letter and have it know which one to do? So you need to end up with all of your column headings in the spreadsheet being unique. So I'm going to wrap it at that point. And I'm going to turn off the recording now, just so I don't forget or get a bunch of dead time at the end. You're welcome to put any questions in the window, or obviously, like I said, email me separately. I am hoping that I managed to get the names of everyone who was in the class. Just scrolling it one more time to see if I missed anybody, because I will try to send a follow-up email with a little bit of information. I actually think I might have gotten everybody. So I will try to send that out. So let me just stop the recording.